All right. A surprising suggestion. The message broadcasts were hard on all of them. They felt another one during lunch the next day. It was Corliss Danton, according to Constance, who had them gritting their teeth, growling at each other, and fighting the urge to throw silverware. And another came during the evening, so that they were so compelled to study with their nerves being plucked like banjo strings. The last broadcast finally relented just as Rene was closing his notebook. He laid his head on the desk in relief. "I'm so glad it's over," said Sticky, who had spent studying time lying on his bed grimacing. "You finished?" With an effort, Rene nodded. They heard Jackson's booming voice in the hallway, announcing lights out. "I'll get the light," Kate said, dropping to the floor behind Rene. Rene gasped and fell out of his chair. Sticky banged his head on the top bunk. Kate switched off the light and climbed into a chair to help Constance down from the ceiling. "Maybe you should start knocking," Sticky grumbled, rubbing his head. "And spoil the surprise?" Kate asked. "Listen," Rene said, scrambling back up. "I've been going over Mr. Benedict's message in my head all day, and I think I'm starting to figure it out." "What is it Mr. Benedict sent us here to get?" "Information," Sticky said. "You think that's what he meant by what can be got? Just information?" "Secret information," Rene said. "Which is why we need to become messengers as soon as possible. We must keep what we are not, or we must become what we are not." Constance rolled her eyes. "But that's obvious. We already know that." "You're right," Rene admitted. "That's why I said I'm starting to figure out the message. I think there must be more to it. I'm just not sure what, except that we need to hurry up." "We're going as fast as we can, though," Kate said. "You boys are making perfect scores on the quizzes, and Constance and I, well, we're doing our best, aren't we?" She glanced doubtfully at Constance. "At least I know I am." "What's that supposed to mean?" Constance said, frowning. "I just don't want to speak for you," Kate said evasively. "My point," Rene interjected, "was that we have to find a way for you and Constance to do better on the quizzes." "Ugh," Kate said, having a dramatic sigh. She collapsed onto the floor, throwing out her arms as if she'd been knocked flat. "To tell the truth, I think I'm beyond help. My brain simply won't absorb that nonsense, no matter how hard I try." "Same here," said Constance. "No way I can improve on those quizzes. I'm too tired to study any more than I already do, which is hardly any," Kate murmured. Constance flared. "Let's see you study with voices spouting gibberish in your head." "At least I've been trying." Hold on, Rene said. "Let's go back to Mr. Benedict's message. What can we think of that we all are not?" "Grown-ups?" Sticky suggested. "True," Rene said gently, "but I don't think we can hurry up and get older, can we?" Constance pointed out that none of them were antelopes eating cantaloupes, or textbooks with hexed looks, or cattle from Seattle. "You're just trying to annoy us, aren't you?" Kate said. Constance grimaced. "The fact is," Sticky said in a defeated tone, "there are an infinite number of things that we are not." "Yes, but Mr. Benedict expects us to figure this out," said Rene. "So we should be able to narrow it down. Let's consider what he knows about us. Something we all have in common, something that could be changed." "He only just met us," Kate pointed out. "He can't know that much about us, can he?" "Well, he knows we're orphans and runaways," Sticky offered, then added, I know, we can't all suddenly have families, so what else?" "We're all gifted," said Constance. "We all passed his silly tests." "And none of us watches television or listens to the radio," said Kate, "because of our mind's unusually powerful love for the truth, right?" Sticky scratched his head. "I don't see how watching television is going to make us messengers any faster." "Wait a minute," Rene said, leaping to his feet. "Our love of the truth." The others fell silent and looked at him. Rene had begun to pace and whisper to himself. "Become what you're not, to become messenger faster. And Mr. Benedict knows that we're not because... Yes, I think I have it." Kate shone her flashlight at Rene, who stopped in his tracks. His exultant expression shifted into one of doubt. He squinted uncomfortably in the flashlight beam. He cleared his throat, hesitated, and cleared his throat again. Well, Constance demanded, what's your big idea? At last, Renee managed to come out with it, and it was no wonder the others hadn't thought of it for themselves. For what Renee suggested was something that would never have occurred to them, something quite foreign to their natures, something none of them had ever attempted. They must learn how to cheat. It only makes sense, Renee quickly explained. When he saw his friend's horrified expressions, none of us expected Rhonda's offer to cheat, remember? That was part of the test. Mr. Benedict is saying we must become what we are not, cheaters, so we all can become messengers more quickly. You've got to be kidding, Kate cried. That can't be what Mr. Benedict means. Sticky was shaking his head. Didn't he choose us because we didn't cheat? Well, I'm all for it, Constance said with a snort. Let's cheat like the wind. Kate was appalled. I can't believe you two. Where's this powerful love of the truth Mr. Benedict talked about? Renee wasn't surprised by his friend's responses. He too had been wary of the notion when it occurred to him. But were they not secret agents? Was not their very presence on the island a deception? Kate and Sticky's reaction was just an instinctive response, he thought. They would come around in a minute. Still, Renee was troubled by Kate's question. Where was this powerful love of truth? His mind resisted the hidden messages, but maybe not as much as his friends did. How could he know? Hadn't he been sorely tempted to cheat on Mr. Benedict's tests when Rhonda made the offer? Was he perhaps not quite the truth-loving, brave soul Mr. Benedict and everyone else thought him to be? Get real, Constance was saying. Mr. Curtin is the big deceiver, remember? We can beat him to his own game. Kate and Sticky had their doubts, but they were less adamant now. Sticky was polishing his glasses, saying he supposed it might be all right, and Kate had begun to pace, saying, it's just that I've never imagined myself. I don't know. It's just hard for me to think that way. Renee, do you really think that's what Mr. Benedict is suggesting? There's one way to find out, said Renee, who really hoped he was right. Not because he wanted to cheat, but because if cheating was Mr. Benedict's idea rather than his own, Renee would feel better about himself. Sticky sent their query at once. Please advise about cheating. A few minutes later, a light began flashing in the woods. Sticky relayed the message as it came. Do not. I guess that settles it, Kate said. There's more, said Sticky. The rest of the message was, get caught. Do not get caught. I guess that settles it, said Constance. Cheating practice occupied the mysterious Benedict Society for 2 full hours that night. The moment the children received permission, they applied themselves to finding the best strategies for earning without learning. As Constance called it, none of them had ever tried it before, and at first they made very poor showings indeed. They were nothing if not quick learners, and by the time they called it a night, they all felt reasonably confident they could cheat a cheater out of cheating lessons 9 times out of 10. Their hard work paid off the next morning. The girls' quiz scores finally began to improve. Given her height and sharp eyesight, it was simple enough for Kate to sit behind Renee and copy over his shoulder, while Renee kept his paper at a helpful angle. Their greatest difficulty lay in watching out for witnesses, but Kate and Renee were good at this, and their teamwork produced excellent results. In fact, they were so heartened by their success that not even the morning's hidden message broadcast dimmed their optimism. Sticky and Constance's cheating strategy was more complicated. Constance was too short to copy over a shoulder, and note passing was much too risky, so at last Renee had suggested Morse code. Notoriously fidgety, Sticky signaled the answers by tugging his ear or tapping his temple. Motions he disguised with head scratches, collar straightening, and spectacle polishing. And Constance sat in the back row where none of the other students would notice her watching him. The strategy worked, but not without problems. In the corridor between classes, Constance complained under her breath, "Every time you have a real itch, I get the wrong answer." "Sorry," Sticky said sheepishly. "I get itchy when I'm nervous. I'll try to do better. Don't just try, Constance said. Actually do better. Hey, my fidgeting isn't the only problem, you know, Sticky hissed. It would help if you practiced your Morse code. Constance's face turned so red, her pale blue eyes glistened so brightly behind angry tears, and her wispy blonde hair was in such a state of dishevelment that she looked more like a small child's painting of a person than an actual person. A fierce display of vivid colors in an odd proportion seemed to have stepped right out of the canvas for the sole purpose of throwing a fit. All right.